Present, but just his mic and his
Bishop High
video
Council
is off,
cookies,
correct?
maybe
Thank you.
we find one kid, maybe not from the homeschool, you know.
Yeah.
See, we got 3 to 4 usually.
Gotcha.
Then from each club is one winner. And those one, they go to the zone level.
Hold it for a second.
6 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Okay, you say so. You the boss?
Commissioner Leach, could you please lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Rue, could we have the roll call, please?
Chair Liu,
Present.
Vice Chair Bakta,
Here.
Commissioner Leach,
here.
Commissioner Lin.
Here.
Commissioner Truxillo,
Here.
Commissioner Lothrop.
Here.
Item 4, public comment. Notice to the public. This time is set aside to receive public comment on matters not calendared on the agenda. When recognized by the chair, it is requested that you please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Under California law, the Planning Commission is prohibited from generally discussing or taking action on items not included in the agenda. However, the Planning Commission may briefly respond to comments or questions from members of the public. Therefore, the Planning Commission will listen to all members of the public, will listen to all public comment, but will not generally discuss the matter or take action on it. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment and move on to item number 5. Item number 5, public hearing. Item A, revocation of conditional use permit for 369 East Pine Street. I'm opening the public hearing, and Mr. Deshawn, could you please review the staff report?
Yes, good evening, Chairman Liu and Commissioners. Tonight, we're going to be looking into the conditional use permit issued for 369 East Pine. Short background, on July 26, the Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit for the proposed Sterling Studios project located at 337 and 369 East Pine. The CUP allowed for the applicant to convert the property at 369 East Pine to be used for long-term workforce housing, reduce the parking to dwelling ratio to 2 to 1, from 2 to 1 to 1 to 1, and improve the parking plan as presented. Along with this conditional use permit came conditions of approval, which you have before you in your staff report. The building department documented grading without a permit commencing on August 12th and issued a stop work order on the project. After a permit was issued for grading work on 337 East Pine, building and planning department staff observed demolition in the alleyway, broken water lines, and grading debris littering the alley and flooding the property, and demolition work on the exterior of 369 Pine. Subsequent inspections of the 369 East Pine property performed by building staff observed plumbing work also being conducted without a permit on the property. It was also observed in several rooms that several rooms were being occupied as residents without a certificate of occupancy in violation of the conditions of approval number 6. Number 2 was also, as I'll state and reread again for you, all future alterations, enhancements, repairs, additions, or improvements to the property shall not commence without obtaining the appropriate permits for the work required by the city and the appropriate agencies. So that basically at this point, staff is recommending, and we'll have time for questions we have the building official here, Mr. Sparrow, and the Bishop Fire Chief, Joe Dell, here as well to answer any questions that may come up. But at this point, staff is recommending the Planning Commission should hold a public hearing and recommend revocation of the CUP to the City Council on the basis of violations of conditions of approval number 2 and number 6. This time, any questions could be fielded. We have a few, and Michelle, could you share with us just for your information, for your information here? These are photos that were taken the day that the violations were found. This is photos of the west side of the 369 property where demolition has occurred. In our opinion, there's substantial they've jeopardized the substantial credibility of the building. In our opinion, we have asked the proponent to get a structural engineer on board to tell us different if he can. We had red tagged the building at this time. So these are more photos of the demolition on the outside of the building. We go to the parking lot. There's piles of debris from grading and also the demolition that's done over there. Michelle, you can just kind of slide through. Water leaks throughout the property create the large ponding. Just generally, as we go a little further, just more pictures of this grading operation. Here's photos of new toilets that have been installed without a permit. Lots of new toilets stacked up. And I think that these are just enough. These represent generally the reasons right here alone that where the violation or the conditions of approval have been violated. And I don't know that if Joe or Tyson would like to add anything to that at this time. That's relevant. Okay. And if they have any questions, that's going to answer.
Destin, aside from the structural stability issues, the work itself, the demo work, the grading was not permitted. Is that correct?
So there was a grading permit issued for the parking lot, but that grading is basically, clearing and grubbing of grass and such. That there was no permit issued for the actual pavement, electrical, drainage, anything. There were no plans submitted at all for a parking lot, just the grading permit issued. And that was after the stop work order was issued, that the permit was obtained.
Did it ever determine where the water was coming from?
The best guess we could make is it's irrigation lines and such that were damaged during grading. And there was nobody, no real actual superintendent or anybody on the job that, shut water off or made decisions when damage was clearly made. There was plastic pipe laid everywhere. There was obviously broken water lines at some point. Irrigation came on at some point in time during the afternoon or the evening. And obviously, as you can see, ran for a substantial amount of time and created the flooding over there.
Other questions for city staff?
Actually, I do have one. You said it's red tagged. Can you go into detail about specifically why it's red tagged?
Actually, Tyson, as a building official, could probably best answer that.
Good evening. My name is Tyson Sparrow. I'm the building official for the city of Bishop. The red tag was issued because the grading permit was only for 337 West Pine and our East Pine, not 339, which is where the demolition was occurring. This particular demolition was in some fairly substantial footings that could possibly be part of the main shear and moment structure of the garage itself. We don't know that for sure. It's going to require a structural engineer to determine whether or not, but these footings are much greater than just a planter footing. So by looking at the demolition that had occurred there, it is determined that there needs to be somebody to show that it's still a structurally viable building.
Thank you.
the applicant like to speak to the commission?
Yes, actually, my name is Jeremy Ibrahim.
It- Wouldn't mind, speaking at
I'll
the
use the
podium.
podium.
Thank you.
My name is Jeremy Ibrahim. I'm a lawyer. I represent Mr. Schott. And interesting, what's been presented here, and the reason why I say interesting is because a grading permit allows for excavation, fill, or the combination thereof. That is the actual definition in the building code of an excavation permit. The permit that was actually pulled is for 369 East Pine Street, which happens to be the Sterling Heights building. Part of the application that was given are two drawings, actually three drawings. And I have a copy of the drawings. If the planning commission would like to see them, I can submit them. The drawings show a parking lot that was required to be built by the town council with a variance that allowed 1-for-1 parking as opposed to 2-for-1 parking. In other words, there are about 70 units. They required 79 parking spaces. The way to do that was to do the parking lot on 337. As part of the application process, it is shown that where the parking lot would be, what was going to be done, and then 4 parking spaces were going to be included on 369 where the planners were. That is in the application itself. It was known that this is where they were going to be, where it was going to be put, and that was approved. A permit was in fact issued for 369 East Pine Street. Oddly enough, just before this planning commission meeting, an email was sent to Mr. Schott saying, hey, by the way, we made a mistake, wrong address, and now we're changing it to 337, which is where the grading was allowed, not on 369. However, it was 369 that the permit was in fact issued. So if there is an issue here with grading on 337 because there was no address, that's a different story. But what we're here for is 369. And 369 does in fact have the permits. I have a permit number. I show that it's been paid. I have the application. I have the drawings, and everything's there. And the work was done according to what was submitted. The issue with the planners, after the work was demolished, I see that in one of the photos, there's an issue of maybe some dirt. There was an issue of maybe where the planners are, what that could be. A structural engineer, according to the town or according to the city, would need to be had to determine whether there was a structural damage. Mr. Schott is more than happy to get a structural engineer to see, were those structural planners or were they not? The planner itself has approximately a 4-foot retaining wall. There are 2 very similar planners on the other side of Sterling Heights, which are very similar to what was on the side of, in the alleyway in between 337 and 369. They are, again, it's a cinder block by planner. Regarding the flooding, there were sprinkler systems that were there. The sprinkler systems were all turned off. What occurred is a water hose was left on at 337. The water hose flooded. It was turned off the following morning. It created a pond. There is no water that's turned on in those irrigation, in the sprinkler systems that were there. They were all shut off. They have been shut off, and the work was done prior to. The city doesn't know what caused the water. I can tell the planning commission it was done by a water hose. So, and that issue has been resolved. There's no water hoses anymore, and no one's watering that area.
So if the planning commission would like to see the plans, the application, what was submitted, what was paid, I have that for the commission.
I'd like to see the permit.
Sure. I just wanted to clarify though, so the permit, we're saying you're claiming the permit was issued for the grading permit was issued for 369.
I have it.
And okay, does the city have any comment on that?
So I believe, and maybe Michelle can clarify best, but it was simply a clerical error on the address. The plans clearly showed the parking lot being built behind the address at 337. There is very obviously no clearing and grubbing that needs to be done at 369. The parking lot, as your commission approved, the parking lot was to go behind 337. The work was clearly done at 337. So it was a clerical error, assuming that I think that Michelle just inadvertently listed that project as 369 is Sterling Heights Studios. So that's how that happened. It was not intended to ever be for 369.
So a separate permit would have been needed then for him to make the 4 parking spaces at 369? It wasn't an encompassed permit for parking.
That's correct. So there were plans submitted as part of the permit process. We have been amenable to working with the applicant to keep his project moving forward. When the contractor came in and submitted those plans to the planning department for that permit, we told him that the parking plan that was being submitted was not consistent with what had been approved by the planning commission. And that also additional information would be needed before that would be an approved parking plan, but that we would be willing to provide a grading permit so that he could begin the work there. But it was not an authorization to begin doing any of the work for finishing the parking lot as was approved by the planning commission. And I would reiterate that it was a clerical error, that we were looking at the project comprehensively. I think the contractor associated with the 369 address.
I believe the contractor listed the permit as 369, and that's why I put it down as 369.
Okay, but also, Destin, I think in your summary, you stated before that the permit was for clearing and grubbing. The permit was not for excavation and demolition of significant structure.
Exactly. A grading permit is basically clearing, grubbing, and that's what Mr. Chat was very clearly told, that he could do that without having a complete set of plans to do the entire parking lot.
Okay. Further question, was any permit issued for the plumbing work that was done at 369?
No,
Was any permit issued for the occupancy of 369?
absolutely not.
And just to get the timeline in order, there was a stop work order prior to the issuance of the grading permit for the parking lot only.
Correct, because grading operations had already commenced without a permit, and stop work order was issued, and that's when he came in and got the permit. Or actually it was through Hard Rock, I believe, or I'm not sure who is that. Hard Rock Construction is who came and got the permit.
And that was for the parking lot work
Correct.
only.
Or just
Grading.
grading.
Just
No,
grading, okay.
Just grading.
Just grading for the parking lot
Yes.
only, okay. Yes.
So grading had been done illegally prior to the red tagging on 337, is that right?
Correct, yes, that's why the stop work order was issued.
Stop work order was issued. He then came in to get a permit, and the permit was issued with a clerical error for 369.
Correct.
Okay, so it's reasonable to assume that we all understood the permit was being issued for 337, given that he was coming to get the permit after a stop work order was issued for 337.
Yes, and clearly the parking, the plan was for that backyard of 337. Otherwise, we'd have been asking for a demolition permit to get rid of the building to create that parking.
If I may, the plans that were submitted clearly state 369. It was done by Triad. They put 369 on the plans. Everything that was there says 369, everything. It's not like one address was on an application and the plans had a completely separate address. That's not the case here. It was very consistent 369 was the application, and that was the address. So
So
I
you-
don't see this being a clerical error when everything shows 369.
Okay, so you're asserting that your client didn't understand that he needed separate permits for the two addresses.
And if that was the case, then he would have needed a separate permit for 337 to do that work in 337 because 369 was submitted. 369 was approved for grading. 337, sure, was not submitted, not approved. That work was done, but now according to the city, we approved 337. There's a stop work order on 337. We can't do any work on that. But they're saying, well, no, you have a grading permit that's allowed. So it's incredibly confusing on what is allowed, what's not. My client did the work that he thought he was allowed to do based on a permit that was issued, a grading permit, which again, by definition in the building and safety, by the building codes, says excavation and or fill or a combination thereof. That's the legal definition of excavation.
Jason, do you have any comment about the interpretation of that permit and whether or not that is
Yeah,
that was
so-
in question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so what occurred at 369 was not grading, it was demolition. What we permitted was grading and grading only for 337. And that was clearly told to the contractor and to the applicant at the time that to enable him to continue with some work so he's not dead in the water, we're gonna allow some grading to go on that property alone. I looked at the permits and saw that it was had the wrong address and changed it immediately.
Okay.
I have one question. So is the applicant aware of what he needs to do to remedy this situation?
I guess I will quickly go through a timeline and I can't remember exactly. I believe it was March 8th. Correct me if I'm wrong, 8th or the 12th. We met with the applicant when he came to us and said that he was looking at the building. Tyson, Mr. Sparrow and Elaine went through and read a very lengthy list of what would be needed to be done to complete this project with the change of use. We again met and probably 2 months later and had the same exact discussion. As far as I'm concerned, the building department and the planning department went above and beyond what we would normally do with any applicant of a project of this sort. So there was no confusion on what needed to be done in this project.
Henceforth, moving forward, does he know what he needs to do? Should his permits be revoked to rectify?
I would hope that the applicant would come and see us after this meeting if your recommendation is to revoke, and we will again go through and do as much as we can do within our realm of what we can legally do to assist him with what he will need to do to bring to city council to keep his permit from being revoked. We don't want to change the project. We don't want to add additional conditions. We just want a project that's well ran, that doesn't consume all of the city staff's time. You know, a project manager of such, something that would help this project move along. Because I will say right now, and you know, this is just opinion, I've been in construction for 27 years. A grading permit and what is usually normally done with grading, a competent project manager would not have made those mistakes.
Mr. Sparrow and then the attorney. Sorry.
Just to add to, I've had 2 separate meetings with 2 separate architects on various occasions and gave them extensive lists and showed them the code sections and what is expected in order to obtain a permit to proceed with this project. So we've give ample information to design professionals in regards to this project and what is needed and what is required.
So in your opinion, the applicant had plenty of information not to misinterpret what was required, and once the permit was issued, what was entitled by that permit.
Correct. Yes.
Applicant's attorney. Thank you.
Mr. Schott would like to
clarify a couple of things. Okay. Mr. Schott.
Aaron Schott. So how this project started is
is I started clearing out the trees and the bushes behind the house. And then I get red tagged. And I call up the city and I go, why are you red tagging? And they're like, well, you're not allowed to grade. I'm like, you're not allowed to grade. I'm like, you're not allowed to haul out dirt. I'm like, I'm not hauling out any dirt. I'm cutting down the trees. I'm pulling out the bushes because I'm getting ready. Because, while I'm waiting for these engineers, because the engineers are months and months and months out. And I have this expensive project and I'm trying to get it done. And I'm not trying to piss off the city. I know I got to work with the city, but this is also, yes, I'm not a contractor. I'm an owner builder and I do need help. And I do need to learn how to do this right. And I totally want to. So I'm pulling out the trees, pulling out the bushes. I get red tagged. I call the city. They're like, we just red tagged you so you wouldn't haul out any dirt. I'm like, okay. So, and I kept pulling out the trees and kept pulling out the bushes, got that all done. And then city says, oh, you need to have the plans and everything done so you can move on to the next step, which, and I'm trying to learn what these steps are because I'm used to just getting stuff done. So I had Triad build full plans, and the full plans included the 4 parking spaces next to the building and 30 whatever parking spaces on behind the house. And I hire a professional construction guy who can actually handle installing the concrete, but the deal that him and I had is I was going to remove the dirt and stuff. So the city gave me a grading permit. So he went down, filled it out. We get a grading permit. I'm like, oh, great. We can start hauling out the dirt and dealing with the stuff on the side of the building. Like, I wasn't trying to make the city mad. And then yes, I mean, the water was ran. It looked like a mess back there. That is totally my fault. And Dustin comes over. He's all mad, telling me I'm doing stuff like that I'm affected the structure of the building. And I checked with my engineer. He's like, those are not structural pillars. Those are for the planters. There was nothing intended to do something wrong. Even the permit, the plans and the permit were submitted for both sides. I had no idea that I was doing something out of order. And I didn't get clarification from the city as to which thing I was doing wrong or how. I mean, I'm an owner builder and hauling some dirt out. The site was filled with trees and my engineer said there wasn't a structural issue and that's what happened.
So we are collectively, we've been discussing an uncertainty, a potential uncertainty about the location of a grading permit, which is one of 3 violations of the conditions of approval that were cited by the city. Was it your intention to do plumbing work in 369 without a permit?
So the plumbing work was, I walked through the building with Tyson. Hey, what needs to be done with this building? He's like, oh, you got to do low flow and follow. I mean, he's showing me the code for low flow and one of them's changing the toilets. I'm thinking, hey, I can replace the toilets without a permit. And I mean, I didn't think replacing a toilet was an issue. And, I start replacing toilets. I can't remember how the city tells me later, well, you need a permit for that. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm replacing a toilet. Like, I can't get these toilets done. So I pull my guy off the project that was doing the toilets and he stopped doing toilets, but I did start doing that.
Was it your intention to occupy the building without a permit?
When I bought the building had 2 tenants from the old folks and they were put in the building for security. And when I saw on the application that you're like, oh, nobody's allowed to live in there. I'm like, I have security people living in this because there's people there's people destroying the building and I need on-site security. And so I left. Well, actually one of the guys left and I brought in my own guys and one of the guys stayed. So I had 3 different rooms occupied and their job was security. And they were there all the time for security. And the city knew about it. I think I brought it up 3 times to them that the city knew that I had those 3 people in there. And I mean, even talked to the city lawyer. City lawyers, I'm like, hey, I got somebody living in there. And they didn't say, well, you got to get them out now or else you're going to be, they didn't say you have to get them out. They just said, well, that's kind of a gray area. I'm like, well, I want my building not destroyed. So what do I got to do? I mean, there's a big asset there. I need to have something that I can afford that, you know, that works and keeps the place safe.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
So-
questions for Mr.
Uh,
Mr. DeShawn? Yes,
Just,
yes.
and I do not want to get into a tit for tat with Mr. Shat, but I do want to reiterate the conversation that myself, Dean Pucci, the city attorney, and Mr. Shat had. Told him that he could not have somebody living in there. This was dealing with other permit issues at other properties. And he said he had a security person there, and Mr. Pucci informed him that he could not be there. You could make accommodations on the site with an on-site trailer or such, but the building could not be occupied. That was a conversation that was had about 3 weeks ago.
Just to add some additional clarification. Currently, no one's in the building. So the building is, there's no one in there. When when Mr. Schott was told that no one could be in the building, everyone was pulled out. Secondly, when he was told he needed to have a permit for the toilets, to replace the toilets, he did submit a permit to the building department. That permit was denied. And so now he's stuck and he can't do anything with it because he's trying to meet the requirements for the building department to say, okay, you want to do work on the inside, submit a permit. All right, here's my permit. Now it's denied because for whatever reason, I don't know why it was denied, but they denied it. So he is trying to meet the requirements as he's being told what you need to do. He was told to put in low flow toilets. I'm sure most people here change toilets at their house without ever thinking you need a permit. You go to Ace, you buy a toilet, they sell them and you stick it in your house. I mean, so he said low flow toilets. All right, low flow toilets. Same thing with changing like a shower head. If you need a low flow shower head, you go, you buy the low flow shower head, take it off the pipe and you put on a new low flow shower head. You don't need permits for that stuff. When he was informed, he did it. He did it the right way, tried to do it the right way, and now he's not able to because of what's being called a clerical error or other things, and it's not that clear cut, especially when the applications and the permits all show a consistency for the building.
Can I clarify something then? So we began grading before we had a permit at 337 East Pine. You went to get a permit, got the one for 369.
He wasn't grading. He was pulling bushes and trees.
That was part of grading?
No, but you don't need a permit to pull trees or to pull bushes.
I've been told I need a permit to take a tree down in my yard. But okay, no problem. So he's doing what you're saying he's doing at 337. He gets the permit for 369. And so he goes to work on the toilets at 369. In other words, he has one address permit, but he's doing work on two addresses. That's my concern.
You are correct. There is one address permit for 369.
But sorry,
That includes a parking lot that he was told he needed to put on 337. So when the town told him, you're required to have this parking lot because you need to have parking, and the only place to put it is behind 337, he thought he had permission to put it behind 337. That was the town's requirement. Otherwise, there's not enough parking for this type of unit. There's only 30 some spots underneath the building. The town's requiring 79, I believe, including EV charging, including handicap parking.
sorry, I just wanted to clarify, Hank, in your timeline from the city, the permit that was subsequently issued after the unpermitted work was begun at 337, the permit that was issued for 369, clerical error notwithstanding, was for grubbing and clearing.
No, it was for grading. It's
Sorry,
actually
grading.
It's a grading permit.
Grading and clearing, right?
Plumbing.
It was not for all the work at the building.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Mr. Sparrow, can I ask you a question then? Because I want to get clarification on grading.
Absolutely.
So can you just explain to me?
So what occurred was that they started out with some brush clearing and stuff like that. And then what we were looking out for is once heavy equipment arrives, because once heavy equipment arrives, then it becomes a danger to the park that's adjacent and in public that could be passing through that public alleyway. And you have to have certain requirements for stormwater protection. And once they started using heavy equipment, we issued the stop work and said, you need to get your grading permit, you need to do your stormwater protection, and you need to have a construction fence and wattles up so that way the public is protected. And that had not occurred at that point. So it was once heavy equipment came into play that it triggered the red tag.
And how much heavy equipment came in?
There was a small skip loader and a backhoe at the time that this occurred. And also to clarify that it wasn't a garden hose, there was several lines hit. We have video of water line gushing water in the alleyway. So the water that had permeated throughout the place and on both properties was from possibly a hose, but what we observed was water lines cut by the grading and the heavy equipment.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Well, we're still in
Public
public,
hearing first.
we're still in public
Anybody
hearing.
else?
So I actually have to ask if there are any members of the public who would like to speak on this matter. Okay. And after this portion, we won't be taking any other public comment unsolicited. It'll be only in direct response to a question the commission might have. Okay.
To be clear, I'm pulling out trees and bushes. Like after, yeah, I'm the whole time I'm using my backhoe to pull out some trees and bushes. Then the city red tags me. I call the city. Hey, what am I doing? I can't pull out trees and bushes. And they said, that's called mucking. That's okay. And then I kept, but you can't haul away dirt. I'm like, oh, okay, but then I'm not doing anything wrong. So I kept going. They did, like the red tag, they had the red tag there. I kept mucking out the stuff. I didn't haul away any dirt. They made clear to me I couldn't haul away any dirt. And so it wasn't the way that they're making it sound. I was mucking out the stuff. And then when I got that part done, then I talked to my guy, we got a permit for the grading. Like, so I have all the big trees and everything done. And now it's time to do the grading and get it down to where the contractor can do his job. So we got to get the walls out of the way, the dirt out of the way, because I have to go down 8 inches, and then we got to bring in DG. That's what that's what I was told and thought the grading permit was for.
And that's what the heavy equipment was there for.
No, the heavy equipment, I was using that to pull out, there was some good sized trees and bushes and stuff, and it's way easier to take the backhoe and just pull them out.
Sorry, may I ask, you were told by whom?
I was told by James. I called up James and talked to James, and I thought I talked to Destin, but it was James that told me the mucking. He says, because he's the one that dropped off the red tag. I called him up. Why am I red tagged? And it's like, and we went through the difference between mucking and hauling away dirt. And I said, I'm not hauling away dirt. Okay.
Okay, I want to make just a quick comment and then I'm gonna make a motion.
We still have some procedurals. Okay, do you have any other?
Was there any other question?
If we have directed questions, we can bring you back up to comment.
The one confusing thing to me is I brought a plan in for the parking on both sides of the street. That's what was brought in. The address was 369, because that to me is like, that's the project address. Yes, we should have put down both addresses. Our intent was both addresses due now to pull out the grading, because it was, pull out the dirt and get that leveled out. So that was the intent. If the city would have said to me, hey, you can't do anything on 369, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll just finish the parking lot. Like, there's people that go through there all day long. It would be this super stupid for me to be hiding that I'm ripping out stuff along the building. It's not like I want to stop this project and make them mad. And it's like, that's totally not what I want to do. And it's super obvious and in public.
Thank you for those clarifications. I think think we understand your perspective.
Public comments? Mr. Deshawn, would you like to add any final statements in this public comment?
No, again, I just want to reiterate that we seem to be getting a little bit off in the weeds. And I think that what's presented to you here in the staff report, what you've heard tonight, I think all assures us or should reaffirm our recommendation of revocation.
So the public hearing portion is closed on item A, and the commission discussion is now open at 6:40. Heather, did you want to make?
There's no doubt that this is an important project for the city and the local area. And I have every faith in our county or city folks in trying to move this forward. And I think it's going to happen. It just needs to happen the right way. So I make a motion to revoke the conditional use permit on the basis of violations of the conditions of approval number 2 and number 6.
I think, do we officially have to, the motion is that we recommend to city
recommend to the
council
city
that they
council.
revoke, right?
To the city council.
So it's now open for discussion. So if we have any other comments that we would like to make, I agree with Heather. I think, it's an important project. It will go ahead. It is clear that there is a lot of misunderstanding about what is required. When a permit is issued, there is a lot of misunderstanding on behalf of the applicant about what is allowed. In addition to the one violation that we focused on for most of this evening, there are 2 other violations which were clear. And that's the plumbing work and that's the occupancy. And in my mind, there's simply no misunderstanding about that. So I agree. I think that misunderstanding needs to be cleared up by going back and working with the city for some explanation and re-education about that.
I'll second the motion.
Ms. Rue, maybe have a roll call.
Chair Lu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bakta.
Yeah.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner Lin,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxillo, Commissioner Lothrop.
Yes.
Motion approved to recommend to the city council the revocation of the CUP on the basis of violations of conditionals of approval for number 2 and number 6 at 337 and 369 East Pine Street.
Item number 6, staff and commission reports. Ms. Kabala?
Excuse me. Good evening, Chair Liu, Commissioners. Excuse me. I have only one item to report on this evening. I do not anticipate that we will have a regular planning commission meeting in October. I had mentioned at our meeting in September that I would like to schedule a special meeting to expedite consideration of the specific plan and the mixed use overlay. Obviously, there's been constraints on staff's capacity. So I am hoping that we can do that prior to the Thanksgiving holiday. And that would be a special meeting in November. That's the only item I have to report this evening. Thank you.
Item 7, adjournment. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission will be October 25th, but probably not, possibly not, at 6 p.m. in the Bishop City Council Chambers, 301 West Line Street, Bishop. And with that, I adjourn the meeting at 6:43. Apologies, I think I refer to you as I've been